I opened the pantry door last March and I stopped. There was a line of ants running from the baseboard up the shelf and into the bag of flour I'd bought 3 days before. Hundreds of them. A thin, silent, patient march. And the first thing I reached for was the spray can under the sink. The same can I'd been reaching for my whole life. The one with the dead bug on the front and a list of warnings on the back longer than most Bible verses. But my grandmother never reached for a spray can. Not once. Not ever. She kept a $4 bag of plain white powder on the bottom shelf of the pantry, right beside the flour and the sugar. And that powder killed the ants, the roaches, the fleas, the silverfish, the beetles in the grain, and every other crawling thing that tried to settle in where it didn't belong. There was no spray in that house, no fumes, no truck in the driveway, no contract, and no monthly bill. My name is Pastor Eli. And today I'm going to show you exactly what that powder is, where to find it, and how to use it. It kills over 100 kinds of crawling pests by the same quiet means. It costs less than a loaf of bread, and once you put it down dry, it never stops working. Not for a week, not for a month, for as long as it sits there. But I'd be a poor shepherd if I didn't warn you about something first. There are 2 bags of this powder sold side by side on the same shelf, looking almost the same. One of them is so safe the government allows it to be mixed right into the food you eat. The other has been heated and chemically changed, and breathing it can hurt your lungs. I'll show you exactly which is which, because getting the wrong bag is the most serious mistake you can make with this. Stay with me for that. And there's one more thing. This same $4 bag does something most folks would never dream of. Something my grandmother did every fall at her kitchen table that kept her pantry clean for an entire year. I'll show you that too, near the end, because once you see it, you'll understand why the old folks never threw a thing away. So stay with me right to the close. Let me tell you where I first saw this powder named for what it really is. A woman in our congregation brought an old farmer's almanac to a church potluck last spring. 1930, she thought, maybe earlier. She'd found it in her late mother's attic. The binding was coming apart, and pressed between the pages like a bookmark was a piece of ruled paper, yellowed and soft, with a list of household remedies written in pencil. One of them said, "For crawling pests of any kind, food-grade fossil powder, thin as dust, along the baseboards and in every crack, will not harm the children or the dog, will not stop working until the rain reaches it." Fossil powder, that's what they called it back then. The name we use today is diatomaceous earth, which is a mouthful you don't need to remember. What matters is what it is. It's a mineral dug out of the ground, a soft, chalky white earth, mined from ancient lakebed deposits, the way you might dig up clay or chalk. When they grind it fine, it becomes a powder so soft you can run your fingers through it like the finest flour you've ever touched. No smell, no sting, no burn. To your hand, it feels like nothing at all. But my grandmother showed me something about it when I was old enough to sit still and listen. She took a pinch between her thumb and finger, rubbed it slow, and said, "To us, this is talcum. But to a creature the size of an ant, every grain is a broken seashell lying flat on the ground. And when that creature walks across it, it can't walk away whole." Here's what she meant. Every bug that crawls, every ant, every roach, every flea, wears a thin coat of wax on the outside of its body. That waxy coat is what holds the moisture in. It's everything to the creature. Without it, the bug dries out and dies in a day or two. This powder, at the scale of an insect, is covered with tiny ridges and sharp edges. When the creature walks across it, those edges scratch through the waxy coating, slowly, quietly. The moisture leaks out through the scratches, and within a day or two the bug is gone. Not from poison, not from any chemical, just from a scratch it couldn't survive. And here is the part that ought to make the chemical companies uncomfortable. Bugs develop resistance to poisons. They do it all the time. The strong ones survive the spray. They breed, and after a few generations, the poison that worked 10 years ago doesn't work anymore. That's why the exterminator keeps coming back with something new, something stronger, something more expensive. The problem gets costlier because the solution stops working. But you cannot develop resistance to a scratch. A creature cannot grow its way past a sharp edge. The physics don't change. The physics don't negotiate. This powder works the same today as it did when that almanac was printed, and it will work the same 100 years from now. The spray gets weaker over time. The powder never does. Now here's the warning I promised you, and I need you to listen closely, because getting this wrong is the most common and the most serious mistake. There are 2 grades of this powder sold in this country, food grade and pool grade. Sometimes pool grade is called filter grade. The bags look almost the same on the shelf. They cost about the same. And the difference between them is enormous. Food grade is the powder as it comes from the ground, dried and ground fine. This is the one you want. It is safe to use around your kitchen, around your pets, around your grandchildren. The government registers it as safe enough to be mixed right into stored grain. Food grade. Those are the words you look for on the bag. Pool grade is the same mineral, but it has been baked at a very high temperature to change its structure for filtering swimming pool water. That heating makes it far more dangerous to breathe, and the bag may have other chemicals added besides. Pool grade is not for pest control. Pool grade is not for your home. You leave it at the pool supply store. When you're standing in the garden aisle or the feed store, read the bag. Food grade diatomaceous earth. A common brand is Harris. A 4-pound bag for the house, about $4 to $8. A 50-pound bag for a whole farm, $20 to $30. Get the right bag and you have what every old farmer kept in the corner of the barn. Get the wrong one and you've bought a problem instead of a solution. Now let me tell you what this powder kills, because the list is long and every part of it is real. It kills ants, the little ones that march across the counter at first light, and the big carpenter ants that bore into wood. It kills cockroaches, the small, quick ones, and the large ones that come up through the drain at night. It kills fleas, dusted lightly into the carpet where the dog sleeps, and along the edges of the room. It kills silverfish in the bathroom drawer and earwigs in the basement, and crickets that come inside when the nights turn cold. It kills slugs in the garden bed, weevils in stored flour, beetles in stored grain, and mites on the houseplants in the window. The government registered this powder as a pesticide more than 60 years ago, long enough that nobody can pretend it is new or unproven. And it kills bed bugs. I want to stop here because this one matters deeply. Bed bugs have become a real dread in this country. They are in hotels and apartment buildings and houses that never had a pest before in their history, and the chemical sprays that worked on them 20 years ago are losing their hold. Whole strains of bed bugs now survive the professional treatments that cost hundreds and sometimes thousands of dollars. Families have thrown away mattresses, whole bed frames, sometimes an entire bedroom of furniture, trying to rid themselves of the problem. This $4 powder still kills them, because they have not grown resistant to a scratch, and they cannot. You dust it lightly under the mattress, into the seams of the bed frame, into the joints and corners, along the baseboards. You leave it there. The bugs crawl through it on their nightly travels, and within days they begin to dry and die. The pest control professionals themselves have begun recommending this powder for the bed bug strains that no chemical on earth will touch anymore. A $4 bag doing the job a $1,000 treatment could not. I spoke with a woman at church last summer who had spent over $2,000 on professional treatments for bed bugs in her grandson's apartment. 3 visits, each one promised to be the last, and each time the bugs came back within weeks. She was in tears at the kitchen table telling me about it. Her grandson was sleeping on a bare mattress on the floor because they'd thrown away everything else. I told her about this powder, She called me 6 weeks later. The apartment was clear. 6 weeks and $4, and the bugs that survived 3 rounds of professional chemicals did not survive a thin line of quiet dust along the baseboards. I can't tell you her name, friend, but I can tell you the powder is still in that apartment, and so is her grandson, sleeping in his own bed. Now let me show you how to use it. And this is the part where I need you to set aside what you think you know, because the rule here goes against every instinct. The single most important thing about using this powder is simple, and it's the opposite of what you'd guess. A thin dusting, never a pile. Nearly everyone gets this wrong the first time. They pour out a fat heap thinking more is better, because more is better with almost everything else in life. But with this powder, more is exactly what makes it fail. A bug will see a pile and walk around it, the way you'd step around a puddle on the sidewalk. It doesn't walk into what it can see. What you want is a barely visible film, a whisper of white so faint you almost wonder if you put anything down at all. That is the right amount. The creature doesn't see it, doesn't sense it, walks right through it, and the sharp edges do their quiet work. The easiest way to get that even coat is with a small squeeze bottle duster. A plastic bottle with a pointed tip that puffs the powder out in a soft cloud. $2 or $3 at the same store where you buy the bag. You can also use a clean spice shaker or even a ketchup bottle with a small tip. Anything that lets you puff a thin film instead of pouring a heap. Now let me walk you through the house room by room, because where you put it matters as much as how much. And there is one spot in particular that nearly everybody forgets, the single best hiding place in the whole house, and I'll come to it. In the kitchen, puff a thin line along every baseboard, right where the wall meets the floor. Behind and underneath the refrigerator, behind the stove, in the dark corners of every cabinet, and especially under the sink where the pipes come through the wall. And that spot I promised you, the one nearly everybody forgets, is right there. The gap where the pipes pass through the wall opens into the hollow space inside the wall itself. If you take the cover off an electrical outlet and puff a little powder into that wall cavity, you've reached the secret highway the bugs travel where you can't see them. It stays bone dry in there forever, hidden from rain and mopping and humidity, and it keeps working for years without you ever touching it again. That gap around the pipes and inside the walls is a highway for roaches and ants, and almost nobody ever thinks to close it. In the bathroom, along the baseboards, behind the toilet where nobody looks, under the vanity, around the base of the tub. Put it in the spots that stay dry even when the room gets steamy. In the bedroom, if fleas or bed bugs are the worry, a light dusting under the mattress, into the seams of the bed frame, into the carpet edges under the furniture. Leave it down for 2 to 3 weeks, then vacuum and reapply if needed. In the basement, along the foundation walls, in the corners, around the window frames, along any crack where the floor meets the concrete. Outside, a thin line along the foundation of the house, around the base of the porch, around garden beds where slugs are eating your plants. The rule outside is simple. Apply on a dry morning after the dew is burned off, and only when no rain is coming for a day or two. I dusted my own kitchen on a Thursday evening last spring. By the following Monday, there was a thin line of dried-out ants along the baseboard behind the stove. I swept them up with a dustpan. That was 4 months ago, and I haven't seen a live ant in that kitchen since. The powder is still there in the crack, still working, still waiting quietly. And here is what struck me. The kitchen didn't smell like chemicals. When the exterminator sprays, your house smells like a laboratory for a day, and the children and the animals breathe it right along with you. This powder has no smell at all. It sits there invisible, doing its work in silence. No fumes drifting through the hallway. No can to throw away. No warning to keep the dog out of the room for 2 hours. Just a quiet line in the crack and a clean pantry. Now here is that thing I promised you back at the start, the one you'd never think to try. It's one more piece of that same quiet wisdom, and it's the reason my grandmother's flour never had a single weevil in it. If you store dry goods in your pantry, flour, cornmeal, oats, rice, dried beans, you can stir a very small amount of food-grade powder right into the container, a teaspoon or two into a 5-gallon bucket. It coats every kernel with an invisible dust, and any weevil that tries to burrow in crawls through it and dies. Your grain stays clean for years instead of months, and you cook and eat it just the same. The body passes the tiny bit of mineral right through without a thought. My grandmother did this every fall when the harvest came in. She'd sit at the kitchen table with her canning jars and a shaker of the powder, and she'd dust a little into each one before she sealed it. No weevils in the cornmeal, no beetles in the flour, not all winter long. Just a quiet powder doing its job in the dark of the pantry shelf, the way it had done for her mother and her mother before that. Now let me tell you plainly what this powder does not do, because I won't let you think it's something it isn't. It does not kill eggs. It kills the living creature that walks through it. Eggs hatch and the new bugs walk through the powder, and the powder kills them too. But you don't put it down one evening and pick it up the next morning expecting miracles. You leave it in place for 2-3 weeks, through more than one hatching cycle. Patience, not panic. The quiet killing takes its time. It is slow on the bigger, harder-shelled creatures. A soft flea or a small ant dries out in a day or two. A full-grown cockroach with a thick shell takes longer, a week or more, because it has more armor and more moisture to lose. You won't see a floor full of dead bugs by breakfast, but the ones that crawl across it do not crawl long. And the most important limit of all, wet powder does nothing. Water clumps it together and dulls the sharp edges. But here is the comfort in that. If rain soaks your outdoor line, the powder is not ruined. Let it dry in the sun and it goes right back to work. The edges are still there. The sun just wakes them up. A few words of safety, because I won't skip them. Wear a dust mask when you're puffing the powder in close quarters, under beds or inside cabinets where the air is tight. The powder is not poison. You could swallow a spoonful by accident and your body would just pass it. But breathing any fine dust over and over irritates the nose and lungs, and a $2 mask saves you that discomfort. And keep it where small children can't puff it into the air. Not because it will harm them, but because no child needs a cloud of dust in the face. And one word about the bees, because this matters to me and it should matter to you. This powder does not know a useful creature from a pest. It can scratch a honeybee the same as an ant. In the garden, dust around the base of the plant, on the soil, along the slug paths, but not on the open flowers where the bees are working. The faithful gardener protects the bees as carefully as he guards the pantry. We need them both. Now, friend, this is the part of our visit I care about most, and it is bigger than a bag of powder. Think about the shape of the pest control business. A man comes to your door with a clipboard and a smile. He walks the perimeter of your house, sprays his chemicals, leaves a slip of paper, and drives away. $800 a year, sometimes more. And not just 1 year, every year for as long as you own the house, because the spray wears off. That is the design, not the design of the bug, the design of the business. $800 a year, over 20 years of owning a home, is $16,000. $16,000 on pest control. A $4 bag of this powder, dusted thin and refreshed after a rain, works for as long as it sits there dry. Those two numbers don't belong in the same sentence, but there they are. A thing that solves the problem once for $4 is a terrible product for a company. Nobody can build a payroll on it. Nobody can run a television commercial for a bag that costs less than lunch. So nobody does. And a whole country comes to believe that pest control is something only a professional can do. Not because it's true, but because there is no profit in telling you otherwise. They didn't sell you a solution, friend. They sold you a subscription to a problem. And a subscription you never think to cancel is the steadiest income a company can earn. I won't tell you there's some wicked fellow hiding this bag from your eyes. There isn't. It's simpler and sadder than that. The bag has been on the shelf at the feed store the whole time. $4, bottom shelf, no advertisement, no bright label. And the man driving the truck past your house every month has known about it his whole career. He just has no reason to mention it, and every reason not to. The good Lord said, "Gather up the fragments, that nothing be lost." And the 24th Psalm tells us that the earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. The powder comes from the earth. The remedy was already here, under our feet, long before there was a truck with a logo on the side. The old God-fearing folks knew it. They kept the bag on the shelf and the pantry clean and the house in order, and they didn't owe anyone for the privilege of living without bugs. And it grieves me, friend, because what was lost wasn't just a remedy. It was the knowing that you could. That your own hands and a $4 bag and a Saturday afternoon were enough to keep your home in order, without a contract, without a bill, without asking anyone's permission. The Apostle Paul wrote that godliness with contentment is great gain, and there is no contentment in paying $16,000 over a lifetime for a service you could do yourself with a squeeze bottle and a quiet afternoon. That piece of ruled paper in the old almanac, the one that said, "Will not harm the children or the dog," will not stop working until the rain reaches it. That wasn't just a remedy written down. That was someone making sure the next family wouldn't have to figure it out alone. That's what the old folks did. They didn't just live well. They wrote it down so you could too. That's the inheritance they left us, not money. Most of them had precious little. They left us a way of living where you take what you have and you make it do. Where you owe no man anything, like Paul wrote to the church in Rome. Where the earth provides what you need and a faithful hand puts it where it belongs. So here's what I want you to do this week. Find a feed store, a garden center, or the right shelf at the hardware store. Ask for food-grade diatomaceous earth. Read the bag. Make sure it says food grade. Pick up a powder duster while you're there, $2 or $3, and a dust mask if you don't have one. On a dry morning, fill the duster, put the mask on, and puff a thin, barely visible line along the baseboards of your kitchen. Behind the refrigerator, behind the stove, under the sink, into the cabinet corners, along the foundation outside if the weather is dry. Then leave it, 2 days, 4 days, a week, 2 weeks. The bugs will cross it, and they will not cross back. Then tell me down in the comments, what pest has been costing you the most? Ants, roaches, fleas, bed bugs? And once you've tried this, come back and tell me what happened. The stories you share teach the new folks better than I ever could. I read every one of these. Next time, I'm going to show you how to keep food fresh for weeks without a refrigerator. The way the faithful stored a whole summer's harvest with nothing but clay, cool earth, and the old knowledge. It's another piece of that same quiet wisdom, and it's the natural next step after today. Subscribe and walk along with me so you don't miss it. Until then, look well to what you've been given, waste nothing, and God bless.